Welcome to the Fleet Manager. You know, if you're managing a fleet of plumbing vans and one gets a flat tire, it's a headache. Maybe you miss an appointment or a customer grumbles.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're managing a cannabis delivery fleet and things go wrong, you aren't just looking at a dissatisfied customer. You're potentially looking at federal scrutiny or losing your operating license entirely.
The stakes are just completely different. It changes the entire calculus of your logistics.
Right.
And that is exactly what we're unpacking today in this deep dive. We're looking at a really fascinating document called The Complete Guide to Cannabis Delivery Fleet Management 2026.
And that year, 2026, it jumped out at me immediately. It
Yeah.
really implies the industry is trying to grow up fast.
Moving away from that Wild West experimental phase.
Exactly. Moving into something much more standardized. And for you listening, whether you're a trades business owner watching every single dollar or a growth stage CEO scaling operations, there's a lot to learn from this extreme use case.
Oh, absolutely. Because the guide is essentially arguing that if you are still running your delivery logistics on a spreadsheet and a prayer, you were already obsolete.
You're toast.
Right. It creates a clear distinction right off the bat. This isn't generic courier services. This is high-stakes logistics where the margin for error is effectively zero.
So let's get into the how. Because honestly, the guide doesn't spend much time talking about the actual vehicles.
No, it doesn't.
I expected to see more about electric vans or secure lockboxes, but the focus is almost entirely digital.
That is the core thesis here. The guide posits that the fleet isn't the trucks anymore. The fleet is the software stack.
Which makes total sense when you consider the complexity of it all. I mean, think about the compliance load alone. You have daily purchase limits, state-specific tracking age verification.
And chain of custody.
Yeah.
That is the big one that the guide emphasizes for safety managers managing liability.
Right.
In a normal delivery, if a package falls off the truck, you just send a replacement. In cannabis delivery, if a package goes missing, you have a massive regulatory breach on your hands.
So the software becomes the brain.
Yes, ensuring that the body of the car doesn't break the law. And this is exactly why platforms like Responsible Fleet GPS are becoming so critical. You need that centralized intelligence.
It's interesting, though. The guide markets this shift under a very specific banner. It doesn't say, for a more efficient business.
No.
The subtitle is, for a safer weed delivery business.
Right, and safety here is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It has a double meaning in this context.
Oh, so?
Well, first, there's the obvious physical safety. Driver behavior, route monitoring. You don't want your drivers getting robbed because they took a predictable route every day. Sure. The software randomizes things and keeps eyes on the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
But the second meaning, and arguably the more critical one for the owner, is regulatory safety.
Keeping the business safe from the government.
Precisely. The guide implies that liability is the #1 predator in this ecosystem. If your software isn't hard-coding the regulations, literally preventing a driver from making a non-compliant sale, then your business is completely unsafe.
So it's acting as a guardrail.
It's more than a guardrail. It is the steering wheel. The argument here is that human error is simply too expensive.
Yeah, you can't trust a driver to remember every single compliance rule at 8 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday.
Exactly. The software has to do it for them.
That is a massive shift in philosophy. Usually, fleet management is about asset utilization, getting the most miles out of the truck.
Right, minimizing downtime.
But this guide is saying fleet management in this sector is primarily about risk mitigation.
And that blurs the lines completely. You can't separate managing the fleet from managing the business anymore. They're inextricably linked.
Because if the software crashes, the fleet doesn't just stop moving.
The business legally ceases to function.
It brings up a really key point for you listening, even if you aren't in the cannabis industry. We usually think of safety equipment as hardware. Seatbelts, airbags, steel-toed boots.
But this guide suggests that in the landscape of 2026, your primary safety equipment is code.
Which is a fascinating pivot. The vehicle is just a dumb terminal. The intelligence and the protection lives entirely in the cloud.
It really makes you wonder about the future of other regulated trades.
That is exactly what I was thinking. We're seeing it here first because the regulations are so intense. But how long before this compliance as software model hits pharmaceuticals?
Or hazardous waste transport, or even just standard logistics. It is the ultimate evolution of micromanagement, but for safety reasons.
So to cap this deep dive, the takeaway from the 2026 guide is that if you're hauling high-risk cargo, stop looking at your tires and start looking at your tech stack. The software is the only thing standing between you and a shutdown.
I couldn't have said it better. The tech is the shield.
Here is a question for you to mull over as you go about your day, in your own line of work, whatever it might be. Is your safety protocol reliant on people just doing the right thing? Or is it hard-coded into the systems you use, like responsible fleet GPS, so they actually can't do the wrong thing?
That really is the billion-dollar question.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Catch you next time.